Well, just pulled up here in the shade of a bloodwood tree, out on the trap line. Been about 19 days in a row, so it's yeah, starting to stretch a bit thin. But it's a good time to think through some of the things that have happened. And last night actually it was very interesting because I had a couple of guys there. We were having a yarn, having a few whiskies. Anyway, it was just interesting to compare attitudes with my own attitude on, say, deer management compared to that from people from another country. And one of the guys, a doctor, heck of a nice guy, was saying, he said, I just want somewhere to go with myself and my boys and shoot some deer for meat, shoot some pigs, just to have some fun and hunt. And he said, I don't care what I shoot. If it's deer, I don't care. He said, I'm not into trophies, I don't care what I shoot. And I thought, well, there goes game management out the window. There goes any trophy management gone. And he said, if I can't get good places to go, if landowners won't let me on, I'll just poach state forests and national park. I thought, right, that's how far we've progressed in all these years. That's exactly the same thing I ran into when I was first started. It's a pity because I thought we would have come a long way further down the track. Now, a lot of people don't realise this is our 150th year of having red deer in the Brisbane Valley. Now, I know I'm a fair way away from my beloved Brisbane Valley now, but 150 years. A very interesting subject. And what I'll try and do is I'll try and put some of that info on those deer and the history of them on our McGhee's Mad Monday and Throwback Thursday, whatever, as I can over the next few months. Now, 150 years, the first 100 years, there was like a total ban on hunting them. You weren't allowed to shoot them. There was no permit season. There was nothing. They were just put in the bush as gifts to the people, and for 100 years, nothing was organised. Now, in itself, to me, that's a bit of an indictment on bad management by the powers that be at the time. They just threw them out there on the properties of landowners, basically, released for a start into like state forest area, but it wasn't long before they were on freehold country. Right, about 100 years from when they were first released, we had our first hunting season. Right now, I remember well, it was just this amazing thing that you can get tags, and you could get tags to legally hunt a deer. But it wasn't under any game license. It wasn't under any proper organised hunting season. It was a crop damage, a mitigation permit. I think it was Section 25 permit they called them, and you had to get a landowner to sign off to say that the deer were doing damage on their property, and you could get 2 tags. Right, for if I remember right, $95 for 2 tags. Now, $95 back in the 70s was a lot of money, and but that was the system. The average, I think, when it closed down, I think it was about 16 years that system was in place. And a lot of young people don't realise that it was even there. So I'll put a whole show on one night about that. I'll show you some of the old documents and detail that a little bit. What's wrong with you? Skunk, come here. Skunk's talking to me. So you're talking to yourself, so I'll talk to you. Right, I'll put a lot more of the details on there. But basically, say about 16 years, $95 for 2 tags, a hind and a stag you could take. And the average was around 17 tags a year were issued for the red deer, the fallow and the chital in Queensland. 17. And that was for every interstate hunter coming up as well. So it was just, the hunters of this country totally ignored it. They just basically threw it out. Okay, now as a guide, when I first started guiding hunts back in the, where was that? It wasn't too long ago to remember, in the 80s. I think the biggest year was 13 tags that we bought for hunters. So we tried to do our bit. When I was catching deer, we had to pay $75 royalty for every deer that we caught to the government. And I was paying that till I realised that other deer farmers that were catching at the time just laughed at us because they said, none of us ever pay. Now, that was the situation. Ourselves, did not follow the system that was put in place. So we complain about government all the time. Oh, government's this, government's that. But most of the time, the fault lies within, right? We have got the ability to do things right if we want to. Okay, it gave the government the reason then when nobody was buying tags. I actually sat with Brian Murphy, with Steve Watson, it was at the time, great guy, Steve Watson, a solicitor, Brian Murphy from America, and we sat in front of the director of the national parks at the time, and he came out, there's a long story to it, I'll go into longer detail, but he called us the biggest pack of lying, thieving, hypocritical bastards he'd ever seen. Right? Because that was us representing hunters in Queensland, or hunters across Australia. And he put the data or the stats in front of us and says, you guys won't buy tags, so don't think we'll ever manage deer again for you, ever. Right? Then the deer were classed as feral and then classed as pests, and we are in the situation we're in today. So instead of people putting the shoulder to the wheel and say, how do we fix this? How do we get people organised and try and get a better solution? They're saying, look, I can't get what I want. I'm just going to go poaching. And a lot of it, if they go poaching on state forest ground, a lot of that state forest ground is leased to landowners. Now, I don't care whether you're leasing a car, whether you're leasing a building, a business premise or whatever. If you're leasing that, that's basically yours under that lease. You don't own it, all the rest of it, right? But if you're leasing it, you've got first dibs on what happens there. Okay, if you're leasing a house from somebody, you don't want somebody else to come and have a swim in your swimming pool. You don't want somebody else to come in and shoot your cat on the front lawn, right? If you're leasing a car, you don't want somebody else to come and get in your car and go for a drive in it. You've got the right to say what goes on there. And most of the time, if people poach state forest or poach national park, it's next to private country, they find that most of the deer are on the land of the landowners and coming back into the state forest or national park area. And that's where the hunting goes on, along that fence line. A fair proportion of the time, right? So it's not a big stretch of the imagination to say the same guys that are poaching the state forest area are the same guys that poach the freehold. And it's an old case of like do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. If you don't like somebody swimming in your swimming pool or driving your car, why go and do the same thing to somebody else? If you're doing that, you're being a hypocrite. So yeah, it's just interesting to look at it there. Here we are, 150 years down the track. We're trying to fight for a better system for hunters and for our wild deer to give them a better status than something that's akin to a cane toad or a wild pig or a feral cat. And our own people that should be standing up and saying, look, I don't care about management. I just want to shoot someone. If I can't get my way, I'll jump the fence. Disappointing. It is so disappointing. There is a better way of doing it. If you're interested, www.theridgegroup.net. The one group that's trying to work within the legislation that's there in front of us to come up with a system that's fair for all. Go to the site and have a look. We'll try and improve things as quick as we can, put more information on there, put the links to the clips, whatever we can do. But really, we need your help to make it better. We need a change of government in this state and a change of attitude by them and by us. Have a good day, eh?